directly go on with the panel discussion, which I have 4 very interesting panelists, which now come to the stage with me, and we discuss together the topic or the topics of cloud as an enabler for data-driven innovation in healthcare. So feel free to take a seat. So who do I have with me? I start with Maria. Maria Barros Weiss is VP of Digital Innovation Ecosystem and Solutions at IONOS. And there she's responsible for several strategic projects IONOS is pushing there. For example, Gaia X and IPCI, Cloud Infrastructure and Services, to just mention 2. Furthermore, I have with me Christina Busmalis. Christina Busmalis is a director for life sciences, and she's the industry leader for Google Cloud in EMEA for this industry vertical. Furthermore, I have with me Julia Hagen. Julia Hagen is a partner manager at Philips and looking on several partnerships in the IT domain and the cloud domain, coordinating this for Philips. And finally, I have with me Harald Wagener. Harald Wagener is the head of unit for cloud and IT at the Berlin Institute of Health, which is connected to Charité Berlin, which most of you from Berlin or Germany know. But for those of you not from Germany, Charité is a very, very, very well-known medical institution in Germany, dealing with hospitals and a lot with research too. So and today we want to discuss, as already mentioned, the topic of cloud-based data-driven innovations in healthcare domain. So just to directly jump in with a question linked to more the user side, we will discuss this too. What does it mean, user and provider, addressed to the colleague from Philips and the colleagues from Berlin Institute of Health. When we look on healthcare, we have several or variety of use cases. So what are your perspectives on use cases in healthcare when it comes to data-driven innovation? And just to start with you, Julia, from Philips' perspective, maybe.
Sure, happy to start. So I think the situation of Philips is a bit of a special one. Philips, many of you know Philips maybe from TVs and coffee machines. So if you leave the room and remember that Philips is a health technology company, I'd be happy. So maybe remember that. Because Philips is, of course, a medtech company in its core DNA. But Philips is really transforming into a health IT and health technology company. So we are delivering on offering software solutions around our medtech solutions to our customers. So when it comes to cloud, we are, of course, consumers. We're using many cloud products for the work we are doing. And then there's, of course, the perspective of our clients. Our clients are mostly hospitals, very large hospitals like Charité, but also much smaller hospitals or larger outpatient centers or diagnostic groups. So quite diverse, but all healthcare provider organizations, mostly. They, of course, are not yet using a lot of cloud products, but we are moving, especially in DACH, because DACH, as you all are aware, is rather behind when it comes to digitalization in healthcare. We are taking our customers sort of on the journey to move into the cloud, and we are starting with some of them to offering them specific cloud services. And there sort of comes our in-between, maybe a bit of a sandwich position. So we cooperate with the already mentioned cloud providers, and we built the Philips Health Suite on top of that, where we add sort of an additional layer of healthcare-specific services that are requested by our customers. And with that Health Suite platform, we can then offer different services to our customers. But as I said, so far, Germany and Austria and Switzerland in a similar way is pretty much at the beginning. But we see that there's a movement, and finally, we see that adoption rates are going up. Maybe that's something for a start.
Thanks a lot. I think this helps to generate some feeling of where do we stand in cloud maturity in adoption in healthcare. So, question just to you, Harald. What are the use cases you think about and already started, maybe when it comes to use cases of using cloud technologies for data-driven innovation in healthcare and healthcare domain?
So in the BIH, one of the main drivers is translation. So getting the research to clinical care and improving clinic care. And that means not just like bringing the cost down, but for example, improving the results of therapies or interventions, making sure that certain things are recognized more easily or faster, and making sure that the quality of healthcare improves. And there is a lot of potential there for big data and AI. And I would say there's even a lot of potential for small data and not so much AI, because what we need to develop is a mindset that this data is used for more than just managing the fact that someone is being served healthcare.
Thanks a lot for these insights. So it was a little bit the user side, and we want to now go to the provider side. So we have two representatives from cloud service providers here. So I would just start with you, Maria, like to give us some insights as a cloud service provider. How do you see the healthcare sector? How can you help several actors in the domain to implement innovations? Which use cases do you see maybe in addition to those being presented? And which cloud and data architectures in the cloud do form the base for those innovations?
Thank you. So yeah, IONOS is a large cloud provider and serving different sectors. Healthcare is in fact an important sector, and a sector with lots of regulation and functional requirements, right? Besides, it's also a sector that is very much served by big data and also AI models. So in nowadays, AI it's very present in many of the health sectors, and therefore all these AI technologies need, in fact, lots of compute, lots of storage, but also on one side the centralization, because these are data spaces that involve different stakeholders, not only individual stakeholders. And therefore, these are complex data spaces in the value chain with different data coming from different sectors, even sometimes. And therefore, as the public cloud has an important role here. And also the development and the strengths and the security and the capability of being interoperable and sovereign. So many of the topics that we heard here before are very important for the health sector, and to give trust, because all these systems or all these autonomous systems in healthcare need above all trust in the system. And this trust needs to start, of course, from the cloud side as the enabler for the digital ecosystem.
Thanks a lot. I think we will come back to the regulatory framework on one side and trust on the other side during our talk. So same kind of question addressed to you, Christina. How do you see it as a cloud service provider? What are the obstacles? What are the use cases? And how do you engage?
Yeah, so first of all, I take a step back. I think the future of health has three key dynamics. One, it's going to be connected. If you think about, there's 43 billion devices that are being connected by next year. So we need to have that holistic view. Secondly, it needs to be personalized. We need to move really where the patient or the consumer is in their journey, to move away from reactive care very much to preventative and proactive care. We also need to think about the individual in their own life, as health equity is very important. So how do we ensure that we meet where that patient is? If you think about, genes are a great predictor of health, but actually 80% of environmental areas or social determinants of health will determine your outcome. So keeping equity in mind is very important. And the third one, it needs to be connected. So how do we make sure that we actually bring our systems to be more intelligent, to have that ecosystem? And of course, that's all founded by AI. And if you think about, within Google Cloud, our vision is very much to be that web, that connected tissue across the whole healthcare life science ecosystem. By that I mean the insurers, the providers, the hospitals, the pharma companies, the med tech companies, the distributors, really to drive data interoperability across the value chain, across that whole ecosystem, so that we can drive out better outcomes and get better insights. For example, we could predict better. We can have better insights to predict or prevent or manage conditions better. We can drive a better experience of that individual, whether it's a patient or a physician or a caregiver. we can really bring a way of having optimized clinical workflows throughout to drive better outcomes. And we can transform or accelerate time to market, for example, using in silico discovery to help with AI discovery to find molecules faster. So I'll give you a few examples. All that is based on data, right? So everything is data's underpinning. And in today's world, and whether you're in Germany or in the US or anywhere in the world, you have data interoperability issues and challenges in silos. So within Google Cloud, we have our healthcare data engine, which really brings that platform to allow analytics and AI to be driven to bring data together in a seamless way. Just recently, we announced, actually a couple days ago, a partnership with LifePoint Health in the US, which is a large community caregiver, so providing hospitals and patients and doctors, to really use our HD, or our healthcare data engine platform, to bring all the clinical data together, research data, trial data, to provide doctors with near real-time insights and the holistic longitudinal view of that patient to, again, predict diseases better. Another area is around imaging, and that links also to Philips, whereas you may not be aware, but 80% of diagnosis is driven by imaging now. And in today's world, AI is as good, actually AI is better than a human doctor when it comes to looking at images. So from a vision AI perspective. So, closer to home, we have Bayer here in Germany, who recently launched a solution called, a business called Calantic Solutions, digital platform, which is really bringing capabilities embedded by AI on a Google Cloud platform to drive medical imaging solutions, whether that's looking at finding triaging patients better, finding lesions faster, or automating tasks. Another capability around imaging is Edonia in Spain, where they built basically a cloud platform to share medical imaging and clinical information between patients and doctors. So 60 million images, 500,000 patients. And what's interesting there is they're able to take the images, pass it through the AI, and actually share it automatically without having it to be installed locally at the hospitals. So again, areas of driving interoperability, of driving a different way of sharing information.
Thanks a lot to the two of you. It was very impressive to see the provider's view and how you can help customers to develop solutions, innovative solutions for now and for next years, especially as we are very immature, as we've heard already. So question addressed to the Philips and to Berlin Institute of Health and Charité. What are your requirements, speaking organizationally and technically, when it comes to cloud architectures being offered by cloud service providers as sitting on the panel or in the market in general? Maybe to start with you, Harald.
So right now, just from a regulatory point of view, it's really hard to work together with cloud service providers because specifically in Berlin, we can't move patient data out of the clinic. That's a part of the Berlin hospital law. And there's always talks about that maybe changing, but this gives me a job because I build cloud infrastructures within Charité using the same ideas and principles, but of course at a smaller scale, as Paul said, also because we're not funded as well as Google is. So I would say there needs to be maybe three approaches. One is to get to a way where we can have a compute to data approach or edge computing approach, so we don't need to move the data somewhere, but the algorithms, the analytics come to where the data can be, because we really don't need to move the data, and sometimes it's also large amounts of data, and in Germany we don't have super fast networks, so that's a double advantage maybe. And the other is having cooperation and partnerships to allow to develop these things with anybody who's interested in doing it, I would say, but also not to forget that these regulatory restrictions are there for good reasons, which are very basic to what we have here as a democratic society. So I'm not saying just throw all the regulation away and then we are free to do whatever we want, because that has risks that we also don't want to accept. So to find the balance there is going to be a very interesting thing for the future. On the other hand, we are not just a research clinic in Berlin. I'm involved in, I think, half a dozen Europe-wide projects, which are either about building federated infrastructures for researchers or actually doing research across countries, for example, in the Human Genome Project or the Human Cell Atlas. So what we also need, if we address regulatory constraints, is to make sure that if we talk about a European digital ecosystem, to make sure that regulations are actually compatible all across Europe and in Germany all across the federal states.
Thanks a lot. There were a lot of topics we can do a deep dive later on. So what is the perspective on Philips on that?
So I think what is for us very important is that we have that we consider the cloud providers we're working with as partners, because we really need to work with them together to get to solutions that work for our clients, which explains why I'm sitting here. The idea is that we find solutions and come with the flexibility that allows us to meet these needs, because our clients, they're very different. You can't compare Charité Berlin with an average hospital somewhere in Baden-Württemberg. It's very different, and the IT landscape in hospitals is very heterogeneous. We have to work with many interoperability issues, and the idea is that we find solutions where we take small steps together with our clients. One example is a fairly large group of outpatient care centers, MET 360. They have outpatient centers throughout Germany, roughly, I think it's about 90 centers. And for example, they are using one of our solutions. It's a patient portal that is sort of a virtual front desk for patients, where they can do a check-in, they can submit data before they come and see the patient. And this is the same solution across all of the 90 centers. And it's sort of one of the few large projects that has already been running for some time, for 2 years maybe, which is quite a lot in healthcare when it comes to provider organizations. And we see that this was a good start, because the clients, and that's something that we also see with larger organizations or with hospitals, where they feel comfortable to start with, because for them it's completely new for the IT department in a hospital. It's completely new to move their services into the cloud. And so we start with these kind of services and slowly move into other parts of our solutions, because we, for example, one of our products is a patient data management system. So it's the software that is running and monitoring patient in intensive care units. That is one of the most critical place in a hospital, and for patients as well. So we are aware that this is, and it's not an objective decision. I think Phil explained pretty well that it's hard to argue that cloud is less secure than on-prem solutions, but it's just a change in culture and the way they work. So for many hospitals, what we see, it's sort of still a long way to go to be able to move these kind of systems into the cloud. But what we see also is that there are interesting use cases that make it easier for our clients to make this move. And then there's also external pressure. When we look, for example, at large hospitals, they're critical infrastructures, so they have to comply with additional IT security measures. And they realize now that they can't. Some of them just don't have the kind of resources, personnel, financial, etc., to actually meet these security criteria. So this sort of is a moment where there's a window of opportunity to actually move a discussion and sort of fast forward a little bit this discussion that we have been having for years. So this is sort of an interesting, it's sad that there's not enough resources and not enough experts on the field, but maybe for once there's this sort of a silver lining in this whole discussion, because it helps a professionalization, a move towards managed services in healthcare, at least for those who are considered by these IT security requirements.
Thanks a lot. I think this was very helpful. And in this context, I want to add an additional question to both the providers. So we heard a lot of arguments or like realities from users. Like one thing I would just mention is like, okay, clouds are in the on-prem world. They can't move to the cloud regulatorily. For example, to the state law being presented in Berlin. That's one argument we heard. The other one is like really cloud maturity or cloud readiness, organizationally and technically when it comes to skills. How do you tackle this? What is your strategy on this? Because it's really not technical things, but you need to fix it anyway to get into corporations. What is your perspective on that? Maybe to start with you, Christina.
I mean, one thing we didn't talk about before was, cloud and data architecture. So I think that some of the challenges around not moving data out. So and let me take a step back. So there's areas around PHI and PII, so personal health information, personal identifiable information. That there's absolutely a bigger fear in Germany probably than other countries, but it's one of those things to manage. So how do you take that information away from data that you want to use? And so our capabilities are around sanitizing data. So before you apply AI or ML to it, you sanitize the data. So we have our Google Healthcare API. DID or de-identification, or our cloud data loss protection, which helps to actually encapsulate that private information, allows it to be, almost think about it simply, removed, and then apply AI and ML to it, right? So one is sanitization. Another area is around where do you run stuff, right? So I think Phil talked about Kubernetes, right? As a containerization. So here you have actually our Anthos solution within Google Cloud, allows training of the data of the ML training of the ML to be done in the cloud, and again you could apply that PHI, data loss protection to it. So doing that training, moving out the processing into an on-premise solution to actually execute. So again, using Anthos, that allows to containerize the information to bring it through from that side. So those are probably two big things that are really important. I think the other one that is you're seeing a trend more and more is how do you integrate by design, right? So how do you use APIs, application program interfaces, there's many acronyms out there, right? So how do you use APIs with data integration, interoperability, security, all that stuff by design as you start to program? Again, we have our Apogee solution, which kind of brings that together to think about how you secure information, how do you publish information, how do you store it, how do you use it from that side. So bringing all those different aspects together. One more thing, I mean, obviously there's some restrictions, and challenges here in Germany, but we're very much seeing different areas around different locations, and maybe we'll come to that as a secondary step of some of that focus. Maria, over to you.
Yeah, so I agree, and I would say even, so it was here mentioned there are all these requirements, mainly in three paradigms that Harald presents. One could be solved with going to the edge, could also, in some cases, could be solved in bringing software to the data instead of data to the software. There are here different functional requirements for different sectors of healthcare. And in the end, like also Julia said, it's not about technology. The problem is not in technology, but the technology can also support this problem with new technology. And in IONOS, we have been collaborating, in fact, at European level, at international level. Different big players in the industry have been collaborating in creating interoperable technologies for data spaces, business models that work in the real business world. And healthcare, it's one important sector in these initiatives. One of these initiatives being GaiaX, specifically for data spaces. And in GaiaX, IONOS is partnering with different partners in the healthcare as well, including with Charité Berlin, exactly to try to give an answer to the functional requirements from the side of technical requirements. And here it's about cloud, but like it was also here said, it's also about all the digital ecosystem, about communication as well, about the cloud continuum, cloud to edge. And important is that we have interoperable technologies that respect ownership, have solutions for this ownership, for the sovereignty, in order to address the different challenges, sometimes needing to process data at the edge, sometimes being able to process the data at the core cloud, at the public cloud. So for different use cases, finding different solutions. In the end, architecture for data spaces that fit the different functional requirements in sectors like healthcare.
If I may add to that, one aspect that we did not cover yet when we talk about regulations being a problem is that we heard Phil talk about doing infrastructure as code and making sure that you can actually apply tests to see whether your infrastructure is configured securely. In the future, it should be possible to do the same with the use of the data. If I can declare what can this data be used for, and then have automated controls that actually make sure that these declarations are applied to the data, then suddenly I am much better than today, where I simply don't do stuff because I don't know how to handle it, because I can prove that, yes, I've understood the regulatory framework, and I can prove to you for every single access to the data that it has been accessed and processed within the limitations set by the regulation or contract that actually allow use of the data.
Yes, and an important point, also taken the point mentioned by Christina, that usually these solutions or these tools involve data from different spaces, from different domains. It's like Christina said, it's not only about health data or personal data. Sometimes it's also the environment where people live, the age, also the weather, even the economic conditions change some parameters and the results, the outcomes of such solutions. So in the end, this makes all these data spaces complex data spaces involving different stakeholders in the value chain.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot, and you already mentioned it both. So there's a project being called HealthX, which is a project from the GaiaX ecosystem, or GaiaX family, one could say. GaiaX is a project to establish a sovereign cloud and data infrastructure for Europe, and HealthX is one of the satellite projects, one could say, within healthcare. So Harald, can you explain a little bit, what are you doing there within HealthX?
I'll try to do it in 30 seconds or less. So the idea with HealthX is to give citizens and patients a way to discover where data about them is, and to fine-grained issue consent for use of that data for whatever they want it to be used in the healthcare system, and not just from clinical care or doctor's care, but we want to span and combine the primary and the secondary healthcare market. Secondary healthcare market is like personal fitness devices, etc., for various use cases, of course, for data donation, for improvements in research, so that we can do things like real-world evidence research from health data that's being collected continuously, but also to have, as you said earlier, better approaches to preventative care or to proactive care, and to improve in the clinic, for example, peri and post operative insights into patient well-being and improvement.
That sounds very interesting. Do you want to add? As you maybe just one question to you, Harald. Who is participating in this project to make it tangible?
A lot of people, so it's 15 funded partners and 15 associate partners, plus a bunch of other people who are not officially organized but interested. IONOS is one of our partners for the infrastructure, for example. We have partners from the IT world, like Intel, for example, for secure computing based on SGX. We have Siemens Healthineers on board, Vilua and Medisana as to Vilua does health data, Medisana does their own health care devices. Office, which is a research institute from Oldenburg. We have Polypoly, who is a startup that does interesting stuff about getting back control about your personal data from here in Berlin. And I apologize to all that I forgot, but the list goes on and on. It's probably, we have 60 minutes left. I could fill 19 talking about our partners.
I think important is that the consortium and associated partners involve all the type of organizations that are needed in order to cover the end-to-end cycle of the solutions. And the main idea is to create a set of data spaces, so a data spaces catalog place where players in the healthcare, players in e-health can find the services, the architecture, the managed services that they need in order to put their products in the market, to offer their service in the market, knowing that it's trustable, interoperable, and sovereign. And because, like it was said here, it's for the all international context. Different countries have different regulations, limitations, conditions. Different states, like here in Germany, it was mentioned. But sometimes it's even more, because if we rely on a digital system for our healthcare or for our assisted living or for our quality of living, and if we live here in Berlin, but we want to go to Greece on holidays, and if something happens, we want to still be available to go there to the doctor, that he has access to our system, and that he can operate with our data as well.
So that's very insightful. I think one can summarize that it's really a strategic project being implemented and bringing fruits or innovations and really bringing the ecosystem to life during the next months and years, one could say.
So the runtime of the project is 3 years, and we're in month 10. Maybe let me add that this is funded by the Ministry for Economics and Climate and not the Ministry of Health. And it's one of 2 funded healthcare projects within the 11 Gaia-X projects, which shows that it's recognized as an important economic factor, healthcare overall. So our friends from Team X, who we cooperate with and who we meet in 3 weeks in beautiful Erlangen. So we will make sure that these efforts actually fit together. Our personal plan is to have a prototype running next year. Building new infrastructure always takes more time than people expect, and then a little bit. And we have something, it's called innovation forums in HealthX, where we actually invite startups and existing companies to test our hypotheses and put our infrastructure and our ideas to test. If you go on the healthx.org website, you will find the innovation forum on the top and can read about that. And maybe it's interesting for some of the people here offering AI solutions in healthcare to submit something there.
Yes, and this is what is mainly important, right? That this is infrastructure. These are infrastructures, platforms that are being created for all stakeholders. And the project also embraces bringing third parties to involve themselves in these results, to experiment, to give requirements to the system as well in this prototyping phase.
Very insightful. And if you have any further questions to the project, I think you can reach out to Maria and Harald after this discussion. So maybe we have 2 more layers or 2 more topics of this panel. I just want to ask in the first step, both Christina and Julia, really about strategic projects within Philips and Google. You elaborated a little bit about these strategic projects, but to get a little bit more deeper insights. And the last topic is really a complex topic. We just touched it. It's regulatory frameworks, but I want to go there too. So just to start with you, Christina, about the strategic projects or the strategic view of Google Cloud on use cases and maturity in next years.
Sure. I mean, there's so much to talk about that Google is doing. But again, everyone knows Google. I think we all use Google to search in our lives. And you know, the vision and mission of Google hasn't changed for 25 years. It's very much to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Now, 30% of all data created today is health data. So you could actually say we need to, organize the world's health information. Our goal is really to make, in general, people healthier and happier in their lives. That's Google's mission from a health perspective. And if you think about it from 2 aspects, or there's many aspects. One is from an individual. How can we provide you the right capabilities to be better informed to manage your health? linked to prevention and areas. And secondly, if you look at from a clinical perspective, how can we help to transform clinical care to drive better outcomes for patients? So I'll give 2 examples of strategic focus for both of those. And again, I could dive into life sciences, which is where my home is in pharma, but I won't go there today. So if we take about on the clinical side, we have a really strong partnership with Mayo Clinic in the US, where they really wanted to, they had a ton of information and knowledge, a vast array of knowledge, and how can they use that to help transform care for them, move outside of the physical building, and really drive a different way from a digital perspective. So we've been working with them, move their data onto the Google Cloud platform. That automatically brought in some extra security, some automation, easier deployment of capabilities. We've set up an AI factory with them where their clinicians and our researchers work together to solve different challenges of applying AI into capabilities. At the moment around oncology, radiation, radiology, pathology, really looking at diagnostics and diagnosis and pre-screening capabilities. So really a good example of how you can take AI, take data, make it usable and scale wide. I think from a personal perspective, so again, go back to Google search, there's 10 billion searches a year on something wrong with your nail or your skin or your hair. Actually, 2 billion people have dermatological issues. And if you think about it, when you go on, your first place may be go to Google search and you type in, I got this dot on my arm. Well, it doesn't really, you can't really describe it very well by written text. So we saw the opportunity to say, can we use search and vision technology or AI technology to help with a person to empower them to see what potentially is wrong and what could be their next step. So not a diagnosis, but very much empowering that individual. And here, through our DermAssist solution, which has a class 1 medical device already and is being launched, will allow a person to take a picture, actually 3 pictures of image on your skin, answer some questions, and that will be compared against 288 different dermatological issues, and it comes back with a recommendation of what it could be, what your next step could be. It can go even as far as where you can go to a pharmacy to get information or go to get an appointment or schedule things. So it's about empowering the patient to do more with their own health. I would say those are two major strategic areas, and again, it links to visioning and links to AI from that side of things.
Thanks a lot. Same question addressed to Philip's strategic view on cloud usage and innovations next years.
So I think our core project, especially globally, is our Health Suite platform. What I mentioned earlier, where we sort of on a layer of cloud services provided by a cloud provider, we put an additional layer of health-specific services, and then this seen in the context of our vision, that is sort of the healthcare continuum, the idea that healthcare doesn't stop, neither begin at the entrance of an hospital or an outpatient center, but it's a continuous process that continues once you are home or before you even enter any healthcare institution. And in that context, I think it's strategically important for us to move further into the sphere where we can address these issues of patients at home. So what we have been doing and what we are developing further are remote patient monitoring solutions, solutions that offer patients, even in fairly critical situations, to be monitored and to feel safe at home, because you know that if your health status deteriorates, there will be an intervention and you will receive the help you need. So I think that's one part, that's the whole focus on moving care closer to patients and to wherever patients are. And on the other hand, I think it's the other main focus is helping our core customers, so healthcare organizations, into moving into the cloud, into helping them to provide the kind of services they need, help them solve their interoperability solutions, what we are doing, and help them to set up the health networks that they really want to create. So an interesting project in Germany is a regional health network in the region of Paderborn, where we are connecting different hospitals and different outpatient centers, and they're all using all kind of different IT services and systems, but there's sort of a common layer and common services, and we think that this is the future where healthcare is organized around maybe a regional aspect sometimes, and we can make sure that patients end up where they should be, and healthcare organizations that collaborate receive the information they need. So the connected care aspect Christina mentioned as well. I think these are the two aspects maybe for now, and the health suite with our cloud solution is sort of the foundation for that.
Thanks a lot for those insights. So we have like about 5 minutes left for a very, very complex topic, which is a regulatory framework. So we cannot discuss everything there, but really to just give some more insights. We already heard about the Krankenhausgesetz in Berlin, which is not allowing you to use cloud in general, one could say. I think you want to say something about.
Yeah, I would like to actually quote our health minister from the kickoff of the digital strategy from last week, I believe, where he said the issues with regulations and data protections are often overblown because you can tackle them. The actual issue are mistakes in architectural design that then bite you in the ass in the end when you go and want to get like sign-off. So the best solution there is to actually think with security in mind from the very beginning, get the experts involved. They're sometimes surprised when you actually do this and say, we want to build a thing, can we have a talk about it, when you don't have something for them to tear down yet, because that's a common dynamic. But if you start with security in mind, a lot of the regulatory issues are not unsurmountable anymore, still bothersome, fine, but I think a lot can be dealt with, and what cannot be dealt with, then we need to make sure that people understand what this means, for example, the ability of Germany to be competitive in the market of AI and big data.
So that's a thesis one can discuss. Do you agree with the health minister from Germany? Like starting with maybe Maria and then Christina, do you agree with him? Like, are there existing obstacles, or is it just companies or organizations or ecosystems using it as an easy complaint where it's not being cloud, why one cannot put it into the cloud? Who's right? Is Mr. Lauterbach right or not?
So we already mentioned here also this, of course, regulations create obstacles, and there are obstacles that still need to be, but there is also lots of work towards development. And there is also communication between technology and regulations, and this is already an important step to be side by side creating solutions.
So one thing is looking at Germany, right? Another thing is looking beyond Germany, right? So there was the Fraunhofer we were talking about over lunch. You know, had a study come out around the digitization of healthcare in Germany, and they're sorry, I live in Switzerland, so I could say they're, but they're way behind other countries, right? And they compared, you know, specifically Estonia, Spain, Austria, Denmark, compared to Germany, and you know, over the last 20 years, Germany's been faltering down in areas around telemedicine, telematic, prescription, you know, all the different patient records and things like that. So, you know, I think there's a catch-up there. I think the first thing is around data and designed by security. Actually, cloud needs to be designed by privacy with zero trust in mind. So you mentioned trust before. Actually, when you know, and Phil has left now, but you know, Google Cloud is based on zero trust. Trust nothing. And then you need to open up, right? So you don't come and trust. I mean, as individuals, we want to trust people. It's technology and cloud. You want to have zero trust and build that trust up. So I think that's really important. The cloud is designed by privacy and zero trust in mind. And I think we also see, you know, consumers. Again, I don't call them patients. I call all of us are consumers of healthcare. There's appetite to share. And in a recent study by Deloitte, and a survey, you know, the amount of interest to share your information has gone even higher than it was since COVID, right? So there's this concern from a regulatory or government perspective, but then if you're on the individual level, there's actually much more interest in sharing your information for the greater good or for better outcomes for you, whatever that story could be. So I'm not gonna say I disagree or agree with him. I think there's just excuses being made in some areas, right, that need to be addressed to move things forward in certain countries where other countries are taking the decisions to move forward faster.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say something. When I spoke with trust and that there is
I didn't mean to
trust in the
criticize it.
systems, this is exactly what I meant, right? If systems build on zero trust, then this brings trust on the side of the user.
You want to add?
I have, a few seconds, right?
For sure.
So I think regulation is needed because it's very sensitive data. It's not about shoe shopping. It's about something that is really valuable to each of us. But I think what we need to overcome in Germany is the fragmented regulation, the fact that we have laws that apply to healthcare in the social code, in 16 different hospital laws for each of our Länder, plus those that apply to the army's hospitals and those to the Catholic Church. That just makes it incredibly complicated. And I don't think that this kind of complication adds additional security or additional privacy to patients. And then there are some situations that was I talked to a cancer specialist last week, and they want to implement a solution for teleconsile, so for telemeetings, where they share data of different specialists, the radiologist, the surgeon, etc., share data on their patients and try to come up with the best treatment for the specific cancer case. And they realized that there are situations where one of them actually has, in theory, if they follow the law, one of those experts would have to leave the room as soon as they find out that this is not a case for the surgeon, but it's going to be radiotherapy. And that's absurd, because we want to have the exchange of experts to find the best therapy for patients, but technically the presence of the radiologist is not covered by the contract the patient has in that moment with the hospital. And that's just weird. So there are some things that are really weird and that don't make any sense, but I think the answer is not just remove all the barriers, but be smart, and a bit of pragmatism would be helpful.
I think you made the perfect final considerations and conclusions. I think there's a lot of innovation to come in the next years, and I think you all play a major role within this ecosystem. So in this sense, thanks a lot for this very interesting discussion. If you have any questions to the panelists, I think they are all happy to discuss after this panel discussion with you. And therefore, I would say we just move on. Thanks a lot again.